Well, guys, welcome back to another edition of The Better Contractor. Today, I'm joined by Travis, who finally has a nickname, the Quote Master. Good afternoon.
That's
No,
pressure.
you
Now
better
I got to
have
come
some.
up with a quote for this
You
one.
better have some.
Yeah, give me a
Better
moment.
have
Let
some
me look at
Wait,
some
wait,
books.
suspense. We've got the Bean King. Bean King has not been on for a while. Mr. John,
Oh, how's everybody doing?
doing well. Jay, you do not have a nickname yet.
Do not.
That's probably a good thing. It
Yeah.
means you're harder to make fun of.
I'll take it.
But today, our topic, importance of follow through and doing what you say. So, and I look back at personal journey with Lanner Corp. One of the things we did early on, we didn't have any money. One of the things we did early on was we followed through better than probably anyone else at that time. Meaning, you shoot me an email, you get a response. You call me, you get a call back. Whatever it is that you wanted, I had some sort of answer, usually within an hour or two, and this is weekends included. But that got us a lot of business because our competitors were not doing that. They'd ignore the call, wait too long to call back, or start the sales process. And then, once that initial contact was made, then I'll get you a quote on Tuesday by close of day. Wednesday, hey, where's my quote? With us, I would set the deadline of Tuesday, but I would tell the customer end of day. Internally, I would do noon. So they always had everything early. It's just little stuff like that that lets the customer know, number one, it looks like they're going to follow through on my stuff. And then number two, it was establishing us as someone they could count on. So I think that's hugely important, kind of the beginning of kind of what got Corp where it is. Then also it was a pet peeve of mine, and it still is, and these guys can attest to that. Like Corp is a big deal that we reply. Like we try to really quick.
Yeah.
For the most part. I think most of our customers have realized, for the most part, no matter who I send an email to at Corp, I'm getting a response. I'm getting an answer. But even, and you guys can attest to this, I'm sure, a lot of my day is spent, honestly, usually with customers that are not following through. I got to send a reminder email. Hey, I need this in order to do this quote, or hey, I need this for that, in order to move forward. So internally, we try to not be those people. But anyway, so trying to relate that to like a self-improvement type topic, gosh, it is important to do what you say you're going to do. So,
and you said one thing in the beginning there that when you were starting Lanner Corp, you didn't have a lot of money. How much money did it cost to be quick to respond?
Exactly.
Yeah.
It was one of those things I knew, hey, this is free. It's just time.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And even now, as we choose, so we've spoken on other podcasts about your procurement process not being low bid, which we do not do at Lanner Corp. It's actually not even really thing I look at. I look at this in the ballpark.
Right.
If I think, this one bill is going to be between 100 and 150, as long as it's in that range, but I'm not going to go with the 100 person just because of price. If once somebody's at 140,000, I'm probably going to go with them if I have the relationship. I know their follow through. I know their customer service is next level. So even with us, we'll choose vendors sometimes based upon, I don't want to name drop at the podcast, but because they reply.
Yeah,
and we know, hey, if we need them, they are going to reply and going to answer the call. They're going to help. We have one as a herbicide vendor. The dude's awesome. I mean, whatever you need, and he's 2 states away.
Mm-hmm.
He'll be here if he can.
Yeah.
And he'll help. He'll do whatever.
He covers a huge territory.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's selecting vendors, key staff to make sure that your company's doing that follow through. So, Travis, thoughts?
We're pivoting maybe the conversation to communication a little bit, but that's an integral part about the follow through, follow up is with what you're saying, communicating to customers, receiving communication back. In the military, it's often referred to, and everybody knows, the fog of war. Essentially, that's disorganization, things that you have partial information, you don't know what's going on, you can't make decisions because things either appear or don't appear the way they truly are, and it's just confusion, it's chaos, and you can't make decisions, you can't make accurate decisions. How do you, and you're always trying to reduce that whenever possible. Some of it's accepting it, but it really comes down to how important communication is, and it is one of the first things that we look for in the battlefield is to disrupt communication. on the enemy side, whether we're intercepting it. And there's tons of really cool stories about espionage and intelligence, counterintelligence, revolving around communication, whether you're deliberately skewing things or preventing them from being able to communicate. But a lot of times in the onset of war, you're looking to disrupt communication on their part because it does increase the fog of war. It increases chaos. They can't communicate to their counterparts. They can't find out what's going on. There's delayed reaction times. Maybe they're making partial decisions or incorrect decisions to their detriment because they don't have the information or they can't coordinate with their other team members. But how important it is. And I think we can translate that to any part of our life. And when we go into business as well, when we lack communication, and it's become more acute too with technology. I do remember a time without cell phones. We're maybe the last generation that we do we remember that as a part of our daily lives. And you think nowadays, if you left your cell phone at home, and you weren't deliberately trying to do that to try and unplug, you almost feel naked. And like, man, what if somebody what if somebody has a problem? What if my wife needs something with their kids? And oftentimes when I find myself in that position, how did we ever do it before? And we
That's
we
what
we
I'm wondering
dealt with
about.
it.
Like with this business, like we've talked about
Yeah.
that. Like, because our guys work remotely. Like I couldn't imagine they leave out, you call them from their hotel room or whatever in the morning, and your next conversation is maybe when they get back if they decide to call you or they happen to be in their room when you call their room. But
Yeah.
otherwise,
You may not talk to them at
you may
all.
not talk to them at
Right.
all. So it also gave them a lot more decision power because they had to make decisions without texting or calling us to say, "Hey, what should I do in this regard?" But yeah, that is a totally different world. We've talked about it before. Would it be
And,
better or worse? I don't really know.
and there's arguments on both sides, but it does highlight the communication component of we expect to be able to communicate, and that it's a departure from the point that we're trying to make here, but there is some power in not having that constant back and forth because it does empower decentralized leadership, gives them some leadership capital that they can go out and do things. But as far as being able to orchestrate a complex thing or in business or for those critical times where we need to relay information to each other, how important it is for you to be able to communicate and to follow through and have for a business. Yeah, I mean, especially from the supplier and the buyer type relationship. That's so important. I mean, I just try maybe dial it down to a personal level. I mean, when have we tried to buy something or had an issue with something or purchased a service and you can't get a response back from how do you feel? And
Yeah.
so you as the business, you from the personal or the consumer side of things, how do you think you're perceived if you're not doing that? And I mean, you can take it to all levels, but it really communication and following through, doing what you said. I mean, if you don't do that or you do that, it's definitely a differentiator for positive or negative if you don't follow through on what you said you were going to do or you do, developing a positive or negative reputation. And then in today's day and age, if any of that is off, with the speed of communication and every online forum and amplification method that they have to tell the world about their bad experience with you. It happens at light speed, and to try and get that reputation back is really tough. And I think there was some study that was done here in the last like 6 months or so, but it was talking about these younger generations, and it even goes into the 30s and 40s that they will rely more on some obscure uh, feedback post on a website than than most other methods of even. I mean, they have no personal relationship, have no idea if this is a credible source, but they're going to look at those reviews, and if you have any negative stuff in there, it doesn't matter where it came from. There's no vetting process. They're relying and making decisions on whether to do business with you or continue the relationship or start the relationship based off of these reviews. So it's so important to manage every
And
aspect of that and not let negative experiences come out there because it will impact you quick.
oh yeah, and I think from a customer retention perspective, like you may make the sale, but during that sale or the process, if you know as a company don't follow through, are they going to be your customer the next time? Probably not. I mean, I wouldn't. I can think, as far as work goes or personal, there's a lot of companies I won't do business with, even personally, because of the experience, because I had to follow through. Hey, are you coming to do this today? I have you on the schedule today. Or you had me on your schedule or whatever it is, so
That's so important like that from the business standpoint. Every department has to be in the same line too, because your sales department can nail it.
yeah.
But if your team doesn't follow through,
Right.
and we hear it all the time. Some companies have great customer service, but the rest of it's not that great.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or vice versa.
Yeah. I think you nailed it too, Travis, on communication. Communication is so important. A lot of this is actually what this is. So if you told someone, hey, I'll be there tomorrow, or I'll be there by close of business, if something comes up, don't do it. Tell them, hey, I haven't forgot about you, but this came up and I do need 12 more hours before I get this to you. Like, most people are fine with that. They're not fine with just being ignored, though.
Left in the dark.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I've seen so many. So we use a lawn care landscaping. It's actually so we use for pest control. It's a different company. It was a separate entity that was doing the yard and the maintenance, and then a separate entity for doing the aeration and weed and feed and stuff like that. I've consolidated that with one company, and it's a stark contrast. One, the tools and the customer service component of communicating. So the ones I've really appreciated have systems and processes in place. I get a text message the day before. Hey, just want to let you know we're coming out. This is what we're planning on doing, or we're probably not coming out. There's rain, or what. So there's a text message, and I can text that entity back. It's not a one-way communication. I can like, hey, you know what? I noticed X, Y, Z that needs to be addressed, and I'll get a response back within a few hours from them. And then when they show up, the technician or whoever's will usually knock on the door, step back, and like, hey, I just want to let you know I'm here. And like, do you need anything from me? Like, no, just wanted to let you know I'm here, about to get started. This is what we're planning. Goes and does it. Some of the times they come back and knock on the door. Just want to let you know I'm all done. Do you have any questions, or you need to stay off this part for 6 hours? But just that communicate was super beneficial. And there was hardly ever anything that I needed to actually instruct or that I really needed, but it really felt like they were on top of things. They were professional. I knew what was going on versus other ones where you guys still coming out today? I haven't seen you. I mean, were you planning on doing? I saw we missed yesterday, probably due to the rain or something. And just the contrast experiences where I don't want to do. I'm trying to follow up and communicate and find out what's going on, and I feel like I am not being serviced in any way. I'm managing their schedule. I'm doing their planning and operation. It's just such a horrible experience, and especially in contrast to those. And that's probably true in every industry, in every line of business. There's somebody out there that's crushing it, that's doing well, and if you're not, and you got somebody that's contrasting you, and you probably won't maintain that business.
Yeah. We've got just personally a company that does, it's a national franchise. They do our mosquito and tick control at the house. They're like what you talked about. Like, they literally, I get a text when the technician leaves. I get another text when they've arrived. And then when they leave, I get another one. He leaves a little door hanger. Hey, it was the little thank you card. Hey, just wanted to say we finished up. We did this. Was out of here at 2:05 p.m. Appreciate your business. And then literally, I'm talking like 2:06. I have an invoice in my email, which I pay with like one click. I'm like,
there's probably some people are like, oh, I don't need all this. Please leave me alone. But for the rest of us, it's such a value add that it makes up for any of those that might not like it.
Mm-hmm. I think there's a sweet spot with different people. So some people like more communication than others. Some want to engage you and engage your services. They want to trust you, let you do your job, and never hear from you. Others want to be notified when you're there, when you left. They want that constant feedback or constant what's the word I'm looking for.
It's a constant communication.
Yeah.
And you could always dial it back. What's the adage? Overdress. I don't know if it's still true in today's environment, but overdress for any unknown meeting. You can always dress down, take the tie off, take the coat off. You can't add it back. So maybe with the communication, maybe that holds true too, in that
Yeah,
you can
just
always dial it back. But
stop.
yeah, if you didn't have those systems and processes in place, it's going to be really tough to add it after the fact.
So it's going to impact your business. It's going to impact your sales. If you guys are working for someone else, it's going to impact your career, obviously. And it impacts personal. I mean, you need to be someone that people can count on, period. Personally, professionally, whatever. And that's really what leadership is all about, is being someone that people know, hey, I can call Jay, John, or whatever. And I know, hey, I'm getting a response, but it's actually going to be a worthwhile response. It's not going to be a kick the can down the road response. They're actually going to help me solve a problem that I need. And honestly, it gives your bark some bite, so when you do need to be a little bit rougher, if you need to be, they know, hey, you're probably going to follow through on this, So it's such an important aspect. And I think it's overlooked in this society. And I think a lot of that is because, I don't know, and I look back since COVID, it just seems like there's so much more communication in the last like 5 years. Like we're inundated with it nonstop, which gives you an opportunity though to get some systems in place and be the company that does not allow that inundation over communication that bogs us down in the office to still deliver that to the customer though. Like that text system, that's probably a super simple software that honestly probably is fully automated, and that's probably implemented for a few bucks a month.
Yeah.
But for people like me that want to know what in the world's going on, because the mosquito spraying, I have no proof he was there.
Right.
I mean, the mosquitoes are a little bit better than they used to be, but I can't physically see that he came. In our current lawn company that we're using this year, like they communicate and they're full service, but they communicate every time they come, leave. I know what's going on, which is for me important. So all this makes me think of two, I'm not going to name them by name, but we've had two customers early on that we actually grew a bunch of our workload with back in our earlier years in LandCorp, but they gave us a little bit of work and they gave us a lot more because of our follow through. Like that was their exact words. I don't have the time to ask for information. I want the information. And this is before we did anything close to what we're doing now. Like the standard then was still high, but we weren't delivering like we do now. But we got more business out of those customers and grew it probably by the one 200%, and the other one about 100% growth in 1 year, because year one, the first year on the job, we followed through at a different level than they were used to. So it's not just like your current sales; it's also retaining and then growing that clientele.
Right.
But you also got to know your customer. So
Yeah.
John had an example when we were not recording about a customer in house. We won't name by name, but you've got to know that customer. But the key to it is the customer must also. So I'll let John tell the story, but the takeaway at the end is they trust us with follow through either way. But John, I'll let you tell a little bit of that story.
Follow through and transparency. We've got a lot of systems in place where we keep track of what we do. We build maps and record pretty much everything you can record in our industry. And our customer knows that if they ever need that information, they need to know where we were on such and such date last year, 2 years ago. We have that information available. So they have the trust factor in us knowing that we can go out, do our job, do what they want, because we've worked for them before. We know what they expect, and they expect our level of execution, and they let us go. Now there are other customers who want to know what we're doing every day, and you just have to communicate with your customer. Ask them what they want. Ask them what level of communication they expect. If they don't, you can usually gauge after things get going. You can start at a level and, okay, this maybe feels like they're not paying attention to every communication bit that I send them, or send them more. If they, keep asking questions, just do it more often.
and have the systems in place to be able to do that though.
Yeah.
So a lot of ours, if they don't want stuff, we can easily knock it back.
Yeah.
And it helps us in the house not to send quite so much stuff.
Mhm.
But you can tailor it. But the point is, like, have the system so you can give the customer what they want.
Right.
So,
well, the key, like we were talking about offline, the key is that communication up front. Like we are very good about when we're starting a project, we talk to them, we let them know what they're going to get from us, and then we may start sending it, and then they're like, "Well, I don't need all this. Like scale this back a little bit." But then you got some, like you said, some of them want it daily.
Yep.
They want daily communication with all the details, and then others just want to know when the project's complete.
Yeah.
So, getting to know your customer in the beginning is key.
So go ahead.
I was going to say the follow through piece. I'm probably pivoting the conversation for what you're about, but the follow through piece, the other half of that, in that you have to be able to do, and that goes back to the brand and the reputation and things. What's the adage of your actions speak so loud I can't hear what you're saying? So if you don't actually follow through, you can have the best communication, the best representation, the best reviews, and then if you don't follow through with it, it's going to ring hollow for them, and you'll lose whatever ground you captured. So you have to have both sides of it.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And a lot of our listeners are people, it appears to be in like a leadership position. You know what I mean? So I think this is such a huge, important thing that some people don't put enough effort into, is the follow through and doing what you say. I know I wouldn't want to work for someone or under someone that I did not think I could trust them. You know what I mean? Trust them to do their portion of a project. It kind of goes back to those group projects in school back when you were in college.
Right.
We all had like one or two people in a group that did their stuff, and the rest of them may or may not even show up. So don't be those people. Be the dude, be the gal that gets the stuff done, that people know, hey, I am glad Travis is in my group, because you know what? The dude says what he's going to do, and he actually does it. So be that dude. Be like Travis, the quote master. Travis, you got any other words of wisdom as we wrap this one up?
I don't. We'll splice it in later as I get some quotes.
Gosh, he earns the name Quote Master, and that's the first podcast he does not have a quote.
I can source one.
I'm going to go back to T-Raps now instead of Quote Master.
Oh man, so toasted ravioli, T-Raps. I don't have one that I can whip out. I didn't have a lot of quotes in the back of my mind about follow through and communication. Do it.
Just do it.
Do it. Communicate.
There we go. Just do it. Dan, our safety guy, we used to always have a thing where when's the time to do something? And the answer was now. Right now is when you do it. Don't put in your to-do list. If you can do it now, knock it out.
No time like the present.
There you go.
You never know what the next 2 hours or so a challenge that I have is I want to do everything. So time management becomes a big problem for me in that. So some tools and systems help with it, but there's I need you need to get it. So books, we can't go without recommending a book. So Tim Ferriss has one, Tribe of Mentors. So he essentially took 11 questions and he articulates at the beginning of the book how he came up with these, and he poured over and really put a lot of thought into the questions and then organized them in a certain way. And he sent it out to, I don't know, 300-400 people, but grandiose personalities, presidents, Dalai Lama. I mean, there was nobody off limits, somebody who he thought was influential from all different walks of life. And it was a bunch of really good questions about deeper, and he structured them in a way that they couldn't just yes or no. And then he articulates how he didn't put all of their answers in, and he wanted them to be able to give some feedback. But so one of them is, what are the top 3 books that, instead of what's your favorite book, which could be very short or could not have a lot of context, what are the top 3 books that you give out the most, or what's been the most impactful book in your life? So things like that. But one of the questions was in there is, what have you, as you've gotten older, I'm paraphrasing a little bit, it's structured, but what, as you've gotten older, what have you gotten better at saying no to? And like that one definitely makes you think, and especially for a personality like mine, where I'm curious, I want to do things, I think I can do it all, and time management becomes because an issue is trying to get better at saying no to things. What's priority? Prioritize and execute, but what's priority? Is this? And then that goes back to, I think, what we were setting on a couple other podcasts, goal setting. Really getting a clear understanding of who you are, where's your place, where you want to go, and then being able to align your objectives and your priorities underneath that. Without knowing those goals, it's easy to say yes to everything, and it's hard to say no. You think that everything's gonna, maybe you can always see the silver lining, and that everything can probably get you in that direction. But being able to clearly set your goals, understand what you're trying to achieve, but then you can start parsing through a lot of those things of, is this truly going to get me closer or further away? And maybe it's not entirely a no, but maybe you can find another avenue to help that initiative that doesn't maybe involve you directly pouring your time into it. And that's become even more relevant as I've gotten older and have more opportunities and access to things, and then kids, and you really want to be there for your kids. And there are several personalities or books and things, and we mentioned it on one of the podcasts there with Josh at Oak Bros, of balance. And there is no such thing really as balance. You try and do it, but everything's always going to be off balance a little bit, and that you're going to have more family time and more quality things and more things in your life, in your personal life, that gets more attention, but then something will rise here where it's demanding more time for business or certain initiatives, and it's just constantly, you're balancing in a degree, but it's never this work-life balance where everything's just even and you've got the perfect amount of engagement on any one area. And that's what we're really trying to achieve, and it's probably completely unrealistic. But
I think so. We were talking about this actually today. Noah and I were about the balance, kind of a cliche word right now, but really it's more about turning things on and off. So being fully present. So whatever it is
fully
you're
present.
doing, be completely all in, be fully present, be intentional in that. Then when you're done with it, turn it off, move on to something else, but go all in on whatever it is.
So multitasking and task switching. So that there's definitely been some psychological work, I think, here in the last 10 years have really dived into that, in that we're not really good multitaskers as a species, in that we don't really truly multitask more than maybe a couple things.
Maybe do a bunch of stuff,
About
50%.
I mean, you can juggle and stuff, and some of the stuff can be relegated to subconscious and your primitive brain handling some things, or you're not. But it's really about task switching. Can you fully switch, and how fast can you switch and engage? And there's also you're being present. So that's something that's come in maybe like the last year or 6 months or so for me. Of I'll find myself not and being fully present in whatever it is, whether it's a conversation, you're listening to somebody, you're in a meeting, and you find your mind drifting. I mean, it's probably a problem for everybody, but trying to be deliberately present and engaged fully. If you've chosen that, that you're fully engaged, and if you're not, maybe you don't. Maybe you need to exit that. if I guess that goes back to the value thing, in that maybe you found yourself in a conversation or situation that is not aligned with your goals or objectives, and you find yourself disengaged. Well, maybe you do need to disengage from that and pivot. But yeah, being present, I think that's starting to come up more. And once you're aware of these things, you think about them and you can see them in your life, the balance, the priorities, saying no. That's definitely, as that's kind of entered into my mind, about something that you need to start looking at. But we were saying that it backs up even to more. How can you say no if you don't have goals set and you don't know where you're trying to go? So there's definitely, and we're probably not the first ones to discover this with the Better Contract. There's probably a strategy and formula here that has been discussed for centuries. It's not anything new.
You brought up time management, which at first doesn't really seem like it's on topic, but really it is. Because a lot of times follow-through issues is because you've overcommitted yourself. So time management is actually really, really important. And if you think, okay, how do I manage my time? Well, you manage your time by having core values personally, having goals personally, and then saying, okay, I got 10 items to do today. I can't do 10 items today. I can do 8. So pick those 8 based upon, hey, do these 8 get me to this outcome? And if if there's 2 that don't, or they can wait till tomorrow, then you communicate to someone else that, hey, these 2 items, I can't do these 2 today. I'll do them tomorrow. But you're hitting the things that are important, that are actually moving you forward. So that time management, I think, is super, super important. I don't think enough people do that in order to make sure they're following through.
Did we have the Wyoming story? Were we recording during that? I don't think we were. I think we were talking about that.
Yeah. So that is one of the customers I was talking about, though, when I said the 2 customers that gave us a lot more work. Wyoming was the first one.
The time management and so since some people, hey, we need you out here 2 days. Sure, we can do it. And if you didn't follow through, we're 3 days, or we didn't manage the crews and the time. So all the other systems and processes. So you communicated great, set it up initially. They need you out there, and if you didn't follow through on what they needed, you'd have destroyed all.
Oh yeah, yeah. So the one story on the one customer, they were out in Wyoming. But this also goes into pre-framing your conversation a little bit too. So one of the things, they had called us, and we were still very young and new. Want to know if we could do a project Wyoming. For those listening, we're in Illinois, so Wyoming's a long way away. And young and hungry me was like, sure, we'll do it. Well, I said that, and I'm like, shoot, I'm make sure I have all this stuff to do it. Well, thankfully, we did. And they wanted us to start basically within like 2 or 3 days. Here's where the pre-framing comes in. So one of the things I had told that customer was, just so you know, I'm going to be honest with you, we've never worked in Wyoming. I do need to check some DOT law. I need to check, getting our equipment out there. I got to check hotels. I know they're not nearly as frequent as they are in Illinois. Here you can, we live in Southern Illinois, but still there's a hotel every 20 miles in interstate. So that is not the case in Wyoming. So I let them know up front, we're going to be there, but please expect a few hiccups as we figure stuff out. But we know you need to start immediately. We're going to start immediately, but be patient. So it set the tone. Hey, they're delivering, but expect a few hiccups. So I pre-framed all that to let them know, hey, expect this. That is also an important aspect, which is way off topic from following through, but an important aspect of all this because it's part of communication.
I think that would be communicating up front, setting those expectations, realistic expectations up front. I'm sure helps. Had you not thought through that, and had you not communicated that up front, as the hiccups occurred, they just think you're incompetent.
And, yeah. Oh yeah. Like he just accepted this blindly without any. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I was very much letting them know this is new. We're going to do it, but I will do my best. One thing you brought up earlier, Travis, was communication style. You brought up because your and I's, just being honest, is different. You're more likely to send me an essay. I'm more likely to send you bullet points. So we know this now. When we first got started, I'm not gonna lie, there was one time you sent me a long email, and I sent it to Katie. I was like, "Hey, can you take this down to some
Chat GPT pull up,
turn this into 5 bullets that I can remember." But I appreciate the detail because it's not something I would have necessarily done. So I think we've done a good job, of working through, those different styles, and tailoring the message appropriately to each other. And it works good in the podcast. You're more likely to tell a story. I'm more likely to summarize it. But anyway, all this communication is knowing the customer, the other person's style, knowing what they need, knowing what they want, and delivering upon it. Delivering upon it means doing what you say, following through, even if it's different for customer A versus customer B. Final thoughts. Travis, you gave yours. Jay, John, final thoughts. Stories, anything.
Communication is a big part of following through. You can't really follow through on something you haven't communicated. One thing that I think is changing is how people communicate. So I've noticed this with my kids, sending text messages back and forth. You can write something in a text message or in an email, for the matter of fact, and you may mean one thing, but the way it's read means something totally different.
Right.
And back before text messages and even emails. I remember those days, and everything was verbal, on the phone or in person. And I think that it's very important to craft your words or articulate your message appropriately, and make sure you build it or put it together in a way that it conveys the message you're wanting to convey, and not something totally different or something that's going to be misinterpreted and could be detrimental to what you're trying to achieve.
That's
And
a good point.
that there's so much that's been. It's really the rise of the internet and that communication style and how it's morphed. But there's been tons of courses and classes about effective communication, negotiation, and things that. So I'm pulling the percentage out of the air, but 80% or whatever, a high percentage of our communication is nonverbal, and we pick up on subtle facial expressions or tone and different things beyond just the words has been so ingrained in our communication style for the majority of us that lived before the digital avalanche. Some of that might be changed, but we're still the human species going to gravitate towards communication multiple styles. But the emails and it coming across, you don't have the benefit of all of those other subtle indicators to understand all the context, to understand what those words might mean in digital form. And most of the time, it goes to the negative, and it seems more curt. It sounds frustration or stress, and that's not what you meant. But when it's just black and white with no other context coming across. You could be in the best spirit when you wrote it, but the way it's received in the text message or whoever's reading it could be in the frame of mind they're in, not necessarily what you intended, and truly trying to articulate. But what's even crazier is the emoji and picture world is
I think that's why they came about.
where it
I'm
so
just letting you know I love you. Here's a heart.
Yeah, right.
yeah, and the younger generations now coming through high school and stuff have even shorthand, even that to where there's even shorthand LOL and BRB, whatever, these 3-letter and acronyms and things. It's evolved to that, beyond that, to where it's just it's a series of like 3 emojis. Like, the hell does that mean? But is this whole subculture stuff. So it's even migrating away from that to short form, and it's as we evolve into species that's still going to need to communicate and business. Like, there's definitely a clash of cultures in there, and truly understanding and paying attention to how we communicate with the various different forms and things is going to be so important. And maybe that's where AI starts to come into. We couldn't not have an episode where we didn't talk about tech. Maybe that's where AI will help translate between all of the stuff. I mean, cross culture, cross language, adding context, and it has been showing a lot of improvement in being able to add the humanizing the interaction and adding emotion and adding things where maybe we're deficient, or it can see how it be perceived on the other side. It can translate the 6 emojis into some sort of text block that me as a 43-year-old or whatever would actually understand. But it's definitely, yeah, that communication, what you're talking about, you have to pay attention to how is somebody, like, it might be how way I communicate, but how is somebody actually going to receive it, and how will they interpret this is so important.
Jay, any final thoughts?
No, I think timing and follow through is key.
Yeah.
Say you're going to do something, you've committed to it, can't get it done, follow through same day.
Communicate.
Yeah, communicate. Yeah. All right, guys. That is a wrap. Thank you for listening. If you liked it, share it. If you didn't, click it off. Until next time. Thank you. See ya.